Hey everybody, Charlie Stevens here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another guitar lesson. Alright, in this lesson I'm very excited to teach you about the boom chuck. Yes, we've been making really great progress on this course and we've covered a lot of foundational stuff, and now we can get into some very important concepts. One of them is the boom chuck. Alright, so this is a very important concept. I use this on a daily basis. It's a foundational concept used in bluegrass guitar playing. It's also used in country. You know, we can hear it in contexts like this for bluegrass. We can hear it in the country context. Let's do it in the intro. Okay? It can actually also be in kind of like and stuff like that too, okay? So really this isn't specific to any style. It's applicable for many styles. But yeah, bluegrass, country, I think those are where it's going to be most recognizable and obvious. But yeah, it's really useful for a lot of things. So let's talk about it. What is the boom chuck? Well, boom chuck is an onomatopoeia, which is describing what it sounds like. Boom chuck, boom chuck, boom chuck, boom chuck. Okay? That's all it means. Okay? And what that boils down to in musical terms, the boom represents the bass note, and the chop represents the chord. Boom, chop. Okay, that's what it is. Bass, strum. Bass, strum. So we learned what I got. We learned how to do this bass chord thing anyway. We did bass, bass, chord, bass, bass, chord, right? So the boom chuck pattern is similar to that because we're going to go bass and chord, but it's actually a pretty specific pattern, okay? And typically we would alternate the note in the bass, okay? So we're going to do a couple of chords today. We're going to do all the cowboy chords we learned. So we'll do all the letters from the alphabet except for B and F. We haven't learned those chords yet on this channel, so we won't touch those today, but I will leave you a tip on how you might be able to figure it out yourself. But we'll start with A, okay? A is a nice one to do this. So when we do the boom, the first boom always happens on beat 1. Okay, this is assuming we're in 4/4 time. We can do this in 3/4 time as well, but we'll tackle that another day because it's pretty simple if you understand this way. So we'll do 1. That's a boom. On beat 2 is where the strum happens. 1, 2. Okay, on beat 3 we would put another boom, another bass note. Okay, so the very beginning way to do this would be to just do the same bass note every time, okay? So if we're playing an A chord, the root note is A. So I'm going to play a low A in my bass, and that's going to be my bass note A, okay? 1, 2. Then I'm going to strum the chord on 2. Then on 3 I play the A again, just the A note that is. Then I strum the A chord on 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's going to be the most important step for all of these, but as you can tell it sounds a little bit too monotonous, and we can create more interest by moving the bass note. You guys have all heard something like that, right? Right? That's alternating bass, okay? Very common with the left hand of the piano would do stuff like that, and the right hand would play chords, or we can think about it as like the bass player would be over there going thumping on the big bass, and then maybe there would be a mandolin player going doing the chops in between, right? So the guitar has a very important job of kind of combining all that stuff on one instrument, okay? So anyhow, on the A, play the A note on beat 1, and then if we want to alternate the bass, on beat 3 we do a different bass note. What note should we choose? Well, it's always the 5th. Okay, so we learned about the 5th when we learned about power chords as well, okay? So the power chord is basically a 5th. Okay, and we learned an A power chord in open position like this. And that was the shape, there was the 5th right there, 2 frets up on the next string over, right? Okay, so technically we go. So that's the note E over here. So A, strum, E note, strum. Okay, so that's totally fine to do that one. this E is a little bit higher, and I actually have access to a lower one right there. So I prefer that one. Sometimes maybe I'll switch it up. Maybe I'll go to the low one, then high. Okay, kind of depends on what sound you want, but typically we would go down for it. So it's kind of cool, right? Because any shape kind of follows that power chord shape. You know, you have your fifth over here, so you can always find the note one string that away, two frets that away, okay? But you can also find it right next to the string you're on, okay? So we're on the A string now, and the other note I needed was open E, right? So see how those are on the same fret? Even though they're both on an open string, they're not really on a fret, right? But if they were, they'd be on the same one, okay? So that's kind of a rule for how this works. If we're talking about any of the bass strings, that is, and we're looking for the perfect fifth of the chord, we can go a perfect fourth backwards. I know that sounds a little bit confusing, but the interval of a fourth descending, so if we went from E to A, that's actually called the perfect fourth, okay? But when we go A and we go down a fourth to this E, we're on the fifth of the A chord, okay? So intervals and scale degrees are sometimes very related. They're sometimes a little bit different, so be careful and not let that confuse you. But it's okay if it is right now, because I haven't really done lessons on intervals yet, and I will, and we'll kind of unpack that, and you'll have more vocabulary to understand what I'm saying. But anyhow, we can basically go to the next string, right? And there you go. There's your boom chuck pattern on an A chord. Okay, so I said we would skip B, but check this out. We know how to do a B movable power chord right here, right? So if you know how to do a bar chord B, which I haven't shown this on my channel yet, so if you don't worry. This is for people who just might happen to know this already. We know that we can do the boom chuck right here, because those are the two notes in the power chord, right? So I can, if I know the rest of my B chord, I can do it right there. I can hop back, same fret, different string, right? Okay, so that was a little bit of a quick one, because we're not really talking about that one. That was an aside for anybody who happens to know this shape already. You can use what we're learning in this lesson to figure this out, but I will give more detailed examples of how to do the next chords. For instance, C. So C is an important one to know how to boom chuck. So we need to figure out what's the fifth of C. C, D, E, F, G. Okay, so we need a G note. So, let's see. I have an open G string. Should I get it there? I could, but that's a little high. It's actually on a treble string now. The third string counts as a treble string, not a bass string. So, I'll need to find a lower G. Well, I happen to know there's a G note right here on the third fret of my E string, right? So actually what we have to do is hop the finger over. So third finger hops over. And again, this fits the rule. Do you want to find how to do the alternating bass, the fifth of the chord? Always going to be one string that way from your bass string on the same fret. Okay, so my third finger is going to hop. And you know, I don't know if I mentioned this, but when we're doing the bass strum, we play the bass note and we allow that to ring. And when I strum the chord, I don't strum the whole chord again. I don't strum that string I just played. Usually I aim for the treble strings only, the top three, but sometimes I also get the fourth string in there. Okay, so we don't want to do the whole chord again. We're separating. That's still ring, ba. You should still be able to hear that one. You don't want to hear ba, ba, right? Where you technically hear that note again. Not the end of the world if you do. So if you're brand new to this and you're having trouble controlling that, work on that in time. It's you know, probably not the hugest deal, but strictly speaking, we want the bass to ring and the chord to come over it, and we don't really want to strum that string again. Okay, so I'm hopping my third finger. It starts here on C, and then it has to hop over here for the G note for the fifth. Root, fifth, root, fifth on beats 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the hopping the finger thing is pretty cool. You can do that if you'd like. However, once I hop my finger over to C, I bring in my pinky finger, boom, right there, And now I don't have to move anymore. I always start my C like this with regular fingering just because that's the way I like to play C and I'm used to it. So my brain just goes there. And then I have a little bit of time. I do the boom chuck, I hop over, and then rather than moving this third finger back where it came from, instead of doing that, after I do the first hop, I bring the pinky in. Now I don't hop back, I just stay here and hang out for however long I stay on C. Okay, and this is a nice shape of C. Sometimes you'll need this voicing. This is called C over G, because it has a G in the bass. So this is a nice way to play a C chord, actually, if you want to hear the G in the bass, which on beat 3 we very much do. Okay, that's the C chord. That's an important one, probably a tricky one because of the hops. So we'll talk about that again when we get more into this in a bluegrass context. We'll kind of check these out a little bit more in terms of stylistic things, and we can talk a little bit more about that one specifically since it will be very useful in those songs. But now we'll keep going through the alphabet to the letter D. Okay, this one's super easy. We have a D on the open string, so that's going to happen on beat 1. Then we strum our top 3 strings. Okay, now we need the note D, E, F, G, A. Okay, well, I know that that's just going to be one string this way, right? This is my D string. Is my A string one this way? Of course it is, right? So we can follow the rule. I didn't even need to count through the alphabet, but I have that way of doing it as well, right? That's it for D. That one's super easy because we have the open strings. Okay, great. Let's move right along. E. Now this one we're on our lowest string, so this presents sort of a unique problem because we can't use the trick where we go down. So we need to do it the other way. This is why we need all the different methods to figure this out, right? E, F, G, A, B. We need a B note for this. Okay, well I remember that's the note I needed when I learned how to make an E power chord too. Please watch the lesson on open power chords if you need a review on that. But we learned that B was right here, right? It was two frets up, one string that way. E, B. Okay, so that means that's where your 5th is. So if you play a full E chord or an E minor chord, all of these are true for minors, by the way. A minor, the bass motion stays the same. D minor, the bass motion stays the same. Okay? All of these are like that. So anyhow, when we do E, we have to do the power chord shape is kind of how I think about it. Root, and then I think the power chord at 5th here, and that's where I get my 2nd note. This one gives you a cool option because I can hammer down my 2nd finger on the 2nd fret there of that B note. Very Johnny Cash or something, you know, old country stuff like that. I really like that sound. Okay, great. We can also go up to this E an octave away. And we can create a little variety by doing that. Okay, but in strict sense, we're just doing that. Okay, F is the next letter in the alphabet, and we haven't learned that shape yet on this channel, but it's kind of like an E. F is just one higher than E, so that means it would be like we'd move the whole thing, we'd add a full bar. If you know, you know, but we're not going to worry about this too much. We'll think about it more like the F power chord, right? Same thing as E, but now F. Okay, and if you happen to know the rest of the bar chord, play it. Okay, there is another way to do that, but we haven't even learned the F chord yet, so I'm not going to get into that yet, okay? That's just a little aside for those of you who already are a little further ahead with your chord knowledge and want to use some of the information we've already learned on this channel to kind of figure that out yourself. But we won't really talk about that today. We'll move right on to G. Now G is an important one because the key of G is really used in bluegrass a lot. So the G chord boom chuck is kind of what a bluegrass guitar player will spend most of their time holding down for the other folks who they're playing with. So again, we're on the lowest string. We can't use our trick to go one string back. So what do? Well, we know G is the root. We know we're looking for the fifth. So we know we need to go through the alphabet, counting 5. G, A, B, C, D. Okay, so we need a D note, right? Where do I have one? Well, I have an open D string. Let's do it there. Okay, so with the G chord, I'm doing a G5 here, just to help get this bluegrass sound. And I'm very careful where I hit the pick. On my bass, I do it near here. And when I do strums, it's closer to the bridge. Okay, we'll talk more about the stylistic bluegrass way to do this and how that would work in a real song shortly too. So don't worry too much about that, but I just wanted to point that out. This is a really important one for this kind of concept. Okay, great. So I went G, I skipped over, and I hit D. Okay, I could have done the backward trick as well if I knew that G is also on my open string. I could have thought, well, one string backward, and there's D right there on the open string, right? But we're just getting the low G, and we have to go up to that D instead. Okay, and that's it. Those are all 7 letters, I guess, of how to do the boom chuck. And it's really cool because these all work for minor chords too. A minor chord has a different type of third, but it does not have a different type of fifth. Okay, so that means that the root and fifth relationship are going to be the same for major and minor. Okay, so these are really handy. It doesn't really matter if you're playing a major or minor chord. It will give you something else to do. If you're playing a song and you're just strumming a chord and it sounds boring, this will give you something else to try. You can play a bass note and then strum. You can kind of separate that. It will sound like 2 different instruments sometimes, and that can be really cool. Okay, well, like I said, we're going to dig into more stylistic ways to approach this and see it in some specific contexts. But that's just a general overview of what the boom chuck is. Boom is the bass note, chuck is the chord. The boom happens on beat 1 and beat 3. The chuck happens on beat 2 and beat 4. And this is very cool to me because this is almost like the perfect rhythm in a way because it contains this kind of separation between the things that happen on 1 and 3 and 2 and 4. And that can be a really big thing that distinguishes groove. Okay, so a lot of songs, their groove emphasizes the 1 and the 3, and so we can do that with this pattern if we emphasize our bass notes. Okay, I'm making the bass louder, boom, boom, and my strums are kind of quiet. Okay, I can flip that on its head and I can make the strums louder, and this will bring out the backbeat. This will accent 2 and 4. Didn't really do anything else. Playing the same chord, still playing the bass notes on beat 1 and 3, still doing the chords on beats 2 and 4. The only thing different is I'm thinking about it differently. I'm feeling it differently. I'm allowing to hear some of the notes louder in my imagination, and that causes me to strum a tiny bit harder. But I'm not really thinking, oh, I gotta really whack this one or anything. No, I'm trying to be nice and relaxed and just kind of listen to the ones that I want to hear louder. And for me, they kind of naturally come up. And yes, I probably am doing a little bit of something with my technique to make that physically happen as well, but I prefer not to think about that part. But you can experiment and see what works for you with that, okay? Alright, well, thank you so much for watching this lesson. I really hope you enjoyed that. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you in another guitar lesson really soon. Thanks again. Bye.